Sorry. I'm just waiting for the thing to go along to say it's on.
We cooking?
No, not yet. Sorry.
Because I've got in the corner. Meeting is now streaming live on.
Yeah, I just need to get it come up on my screen so I can shut it down. Otherwise, we get echo. Sorry. That's it. Yeah, we're there. Yeah, we're away. Thank you.
Lovely. Good evening, members. I haven't got a printout of the introductory comments, but they're pretty short and sweet. This meeting's going to be filmed live and kept on the council's YouTube page. Therefore, the council is not responsible with regards to any comments posted on there. Please use your common sense with phones and just conduct yourself in your normal way at meetings and we'll be fine. Apologies for absence, Sarah.
We have Councillor Don Morris for Councillor Rimmer, and we have apologies from Mrs. Forder and Mrs. French.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any declarations of interest? Right, well, I'd like to declare one, and obviously my colleague, Councillor Henry, if anything pops up with regards to Essex County Council through any of the items tonight. Councillor Henry.
In relation to item 6, I'm also a member of the Town Twinning Association.
Well spotted. Thank you, Councillor Henry. So I take that as declaration. Then we go to item 3, the minutes of the previous Housing and Communities Committee held on the 23rd of February this year, pages 5 to 14. Are there any comments? No. So I shall call you out alphabetically to vote on it. How will you be voting, Councillor Golden?
I'll support the minutes.
Councillor Henry?
In favour.
Councillor Morris?
I'll abstain, Chairman.
Councillor Schrader?
I abstain. I wasn't present.
Okay. Councillor Yacoub?
In favour.
And I shall be voting in favour. So those minutes passed. Then we need to agree the minutes held on the Housing Development Subcommittee that was held on the 9th of February, pages 15 to 20. So does anyone
That's just for note. Yeah, that's just for noting, Chairman, that one.
Oh, okay. Even better. That shows a bit of time off. Then we go to item 5, the Basildon, Billericay and Wickford Council for Voluntary Services Grant Funding Agreement. Who do we have there for that, please, Sarah?
We've got Grant introducing it.
Okay, Grant Taylor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm very grateful to be given a chance to come and speak to this tonight. I'm also very pleased to say that Simon, the CEO of BBW CVS, is with us today as well, who will be here to speak about his service and answer any questions. So just to introduce this matter quickly, based on the report, I'm sure everyone on the call will know that Basildon, Billericay and Whitford Council Voluntary Services provide a range of services to meet the needs of the local voluntary community sector, helping start-up organisations as well as those already established. The council has a grant funding agreement with them, which sets our key performance indicators. We do this in line with our Essex County Council colleagues who are co-funders of the CVS here in Basildon, as well as having a similar relationship with councils up and down Essex. The KPIs very much look to the value for money we can derive out of that and contribute to the council's overall objectives being important. So the report sets out a series of, it sets out the last 3 years of the grant funding agreement, 2018-19 up until the year that's just about to finish, and it will showcase there a number of different things that they've done very positive to influence our borough, from the Basildon Emergency Night Shelter work with local volunteers, supporting funding applications of gaining roughly £137,000 into the borough in 18-19, working with local groups. Working to support the fun walk in Billericay with John Barron MP, which helped raise approximately £100,000 for local charities. And the year before last, bringing in £386,000 in external grant money through working with local groups. During 1920, there was a changeover in the chief officer. As I say, Simon's with us today. And of course, it was a slightly different year this year that we're completing now, which therefore means that business as usual, for obvious reasons, has been very different. But what I would say is that the work of our CVS colleagues has been absolutely integral to the communities and the council's wider response around the ongoing COVID pandemic. And the CVS, right from the outset, and remain to be one of the key partners in our community hub, which we're very grateful for. Also pleased to say that even over the last year, the CVS have still been able to expand and react to this important work and learning that's been happening over the COVID period, bringing in £58,000 from the National Lottery to rebrand the local volunteering offer. This is particularly important as we saw so many new volunteers coming up, or people that perhaps weren't necessarily volunteers, but carrying out those neighbourly roles. And I think that's been really, really helpful with the CVS playing its part in being able to support the testing and vaccination centres in Essex. So that's been a real good outcome. They changed to a free membership model over this last year. So not just based on only supporting those that paid in, but actually trying to therefore get more people involved and therefore bring in more funding into the borough, which I think was an important step. And I'm very pleased to say that we've been working with them extensively to set up the borough's first mental health forum, working with so many of the excellent voluntary organisations that work in that field. So the current grant funding agreement therefore comes to an end as of the 31st of March this year. What has been clear for our conversations with our county colleagues is that and with the CVS themselves is that the current grant funding agreement is very resource intensive, and that leads to the CVS spending an inordinate amount of time in actually filling out forms rather than doing the work. So we've been really, really keen to work with County and with the CVS to look at that and how we actually provide more space for more tangible outcomes to be achieved. I'm really grateful for the CVS and for our county colleagues about being the first borough in Essex to really review what it is we wanted to get from these KPIs. So we've started to see, and members will see from the appendices, that we've seen much less quantitative every time. Much less quantitative data and much more qualitative outcomes. So on that basis, the needs of the voluntary and community sector, and we know they continue to change, therefore are able to be impacted much better. You will see in enclosure number 2 what the new KPIs refer to, and of course Simon or myself will happily answer any questions. They're built around enabling the voluntary sector, being aware of where the gaps are and looking to fill them, and connecting and working with partnerships to drive effective change. So the reporting moving forward will be less around numbers and more detailed narrative that shows the evidence to how the behaviours and key performance indicators are being met. It will, rather than being a 3-year static plan, although it will be 3-year funding should the committee agree it, there will be an annual work plan that we will work to as Essex, the Borough Authority and the CVS to ensure it's most up to date. Clearly, the last year saw a seismic change and a pivoting in the way we were doing things, and we want to make sure that we continue to work in that way. I'm pleased to say that therefore a new plan will be coming into being annually, which we will review. I will pass over now to the committee, or whether Simon's got anything particular to say or to answer questions. I'll leave that to you, Councillor Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Simon, do you want to give us say a few words, and then we'll go to the floor to members?
First of all, I'd like to commend all of the staff that's been involved with the council and the response to coronavirus. I know this is probably, something that's come a few times, but I would like to say Grant especially, from day one, constantly on the phone, keeping in contact, making sure that we're aware of the response. And, this is my opportunity to be grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Members, does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Thanks, Grant, and thanks, Simon. Could you build a picture of the sort of workload you've got coming up over the next 3 years, and whether or not the funding, which seems, considering the amount that you're reported to be doing, the funding seems somewhat stingy, if that would be the right word. Does that come anywhere close? I mean, what do you all feel in terms of your organisation is the viability? Grant mentions that you've now stopped paying subs for membership and stuff like that. What's the impact of that in real terms? And are you going to cope? Are you going to be, we get a year into it and we review your plan, but 2 years into it, are you in trouble?
This is a little bit of my fear, to be honest. To try and increase our capacity at the same time as the sector sort of increases in demand. It's a volunteering itself has just dramatically increased. Volunteering is very different now than it was over a year ago. It was very much like a brokerage service, when now we have a reserve that responds and reacts to what's going on in our communities. We'd like to sort of move this forward into the future, hopefully for recovery as well. And that does obviously put more pressure on us with small resource. So it is a challenging period at the moment. We'd like to try and navigate that. We understand that, the NHS, for example, have a particular interest in what we're doing at the moment, and we're trying to hopefully influence a whole system approach to the way that we are supported. But at the moment, yeah, it's extremely tight. We don't cover our overheads at the moment, so it is quite a challenge.
Chairman, if I can come back,
yes, please.
We've all been through a peculiar year. We've all seen the difficulties and the challenges faced by communities, and we've also all seen and witnessed the amazing things that communities have done when presented with the opportunity to step up and help their neighbours. Is there other opportunities, additional funding opportunities through this committee to increase that, or to look at maybe some of the things that we did with the BCTS? If you look at that, we consumer price indexed and raised the funding that we gave to those. It just seems that we'll have one opportunity to keep volunteers volunteering, and if we get that wrong, everybody goes back to having their own private lives, and the opportunity to go out and do things, but no longer doing things with each other and for each other in the communities that they live amongst. So I think the long and short of it is, if we're not careful with funding, we could blow it. We could blow it and switch off an awful lot of people who have suddenly found themselves activated and suddenly found themselves to be community groups, even though they're not doing anything different. They're just helping a little bit more, but their communities are now seeing themselves in different fashions after the last year. So I think we need to have a little look as a committee if there's something that we can do for Simon and the BBWCVS to make sure that they don't fail, to make sure that they're robust, not just till the next plan, but into the next, pricing quarter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will call in Councillor Schrader. Grant, what's the money situation available to us?
Right. Well, I mean, from my point of view as a service manager, obviously this money is budgeted through the medium-term financial strategy. It would be something I would need to search for within my service to find a way of resolving that, which obviously has been what I've needed to do with community transport too. I would say, and I recognise what Councillor Schrader is saying now. Obviously, we are a funder. Essex County Council are a funder too. We do. I think it's also fair to say that we provide the BBWCVS with with office space to work from a peppercorn rate as well. So there's quite a large contribution from that angle as well with their space in the George Hurd. But of course, recognise what is being discussed here. It would be something I would need to take away to work out how we might secure further funding if that's what the committee would like me to do.
I think that might be an idea, Grant. If you go away and come back to the next committee, an update of possible funding solutions. Councillor Schrader.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I can also take this opportunity to thank all the staff involved at CVS for everything that they've been doing throughout the pandemic. I completely agree with the comments that have been made by Councillor Henry. The increasing in volunteering has been mentioned, and I think we were all pleasantly surprised, if not amazed, by the take-up of volunteering opportunities at the start of the pandemic, when all those people volunteered to help with the NHS and with manning the vaccination centre, the test centres, and then later on, of course, the vaccination centres, and everything that's been happening really just across the piece. And everyone has, you know, across all of our communities, up and down the borough and all over the country, have really been stepping up. So I think that Councillor Henry's really hit the nail on the head. There is an amazing opportunity here to get hold of people who perhaps are volunteering their time, and for the first time ever, you know, they've felt moved to do it because of the situation that we've all been in, and where perhaps previously they'd just hadn't considered it, or maybe they thought about it and thought, oh, I'm not sure if I've got the time, but they took the plunge because that was what the country needed at the time. And I think if we've got them on the hook now, we need to do everything we can to make sure that people are encouraged to keep up their participation in these things. And I think that anything that we can do, even if it's not necessary to provide more funding ourselves, although I think we should definitely look at that, and maybe if Grant can go away and have a look at that, maybe have a discussion with colleagues at Essex County Council to see what more we can do as a council. But even if we can, whatever support we can give to the CVS to look at our other potential funding streams, other maybe pots of money that we can help them apply for. They may need, you know, some sort of support in, you know, even if it's secretarial support or whatever in doing that, because I know that, you know, a lot of these kind of grant funding applications, a lot of these grant funding applications can be quite laborious, they can be quite technical and difficult. If there's anything that the council can do to support the CVS in examining every avenue to make sure that we can keep the show on the road, because I think, you know, the performance that you guys have put in has been absolutely stellar, and, you know, who knows what the future may hold if we have you know, something like this, God forbid, happens again. We want you guys to still be there and still be operating for us and for all our residents. So absolutely 100% support anything any rabbits that Grant can pull out the hat, and any practical support we can give the CVS. I think we should leave no stone unturned. Thank you very much.
Chair, is it okay to
Thank
make
you, Councillor. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Schrader. I had the head of finance waiting to stick his hand up. Do you want to come in, the head of finance, whoever we got tonight?
It's the same. It's the same with finance as usual. Do others want to speak first, rather than me making my point? I'm happy to wait for.
Okay.
I believe the chap from CVS wanted to talk, and Councillor Henry's got his hand up as well. So
I thought you was Owen Sparks, the money man.
And I'm Richard Larkman, the money man.
Yeah, but you're the man who likes to say no to councillors. Sorry, I will bring
I'm
in
the man who
Simon.
likes to say no.
There you go. I'll bring in Simon and Councillor Henry.
Brilliant, thank you. I just wanted to sort of add on that. You know, the success that we've had this year has been amazing, and we have been commended in Parliament for the response that was taken at Towngate Theatre. And, you know, and that's a collective response with us and the local Rotary as well. But it's a great, you know, it's a great success. And if you consider, you know, that's one of the best responses in the country, you know, imagine that in the world. That's in my view, you know, massively impressed with the response that we all had there. We're not looking for Basildon Council to be, you know, take the lion's share, you know, and it's important. So we have developed a strategy where it's proportionate. And basically before the pandemic, we was considering, you know, our own strategic plan of how this could be fair and proportionate. And we're looking at a 40-40-40 model. So Essex County Council are very near that. It would be, you know, a pleasure if Basildon Council could hopefully conform to that model. And we are looking for the NHS to contribute to the additional 40, and them discussions are in place. I don't think it's fair to put that burden on one organisation. So I hope you can appreciate that, you know, this is not just trying to sort of tug at yourselves, it's trying to tug at a few options that hopefully be available for us. As a CVS, it is quite challenging because we're infrastructure support. We don't work directly with the beneficiaries. When if you look at the lottery and many funders, they particularly prime to work with people that are, you know, engaging directly with the public. So it does cause some other challenges for ourselves in that sense as well. I just wanted to add that just to sort of clarify.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Henry.
Just wanted to throw in there that I'm very happy to sit with Grant and Simon and meet with Kirsty O'Callaghan at Essex or whoever else to see if we can organise some bid writing help and support and stuff like that. So if we need to do that, I'm very amenable to sitting down and helping with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard? Sound like Mrs. Bucket there. Richard?
Yes, thank you. It feels to me like there's a need for. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I was aware of the debate about supporting the community transport service, and I believe there was another SLA discussed then, and we've got this one today, and then there are no doubt others. It feels to me, and at the moment, it feels that we're dealing with these things piecemeal. Yeah, and it feels to me that that there might be room here for the council to take a fundamental, holistic look at the funding that it provides to community-based activities, volunteering activities, rather than trying to deal with it piecemeal. It's unfortunate in many ways that we didn't have these debates before the budget was set, because if we'd had the debates before the budget was set, perhaps we could have reflected something in the budget. But at the moment, I think as Grant has made the point very well, that, as it stands at the moment, he would need to go away and look at his resources and say, well, actually, I need to not do this. I need to reprioritize something. There were sums of money that were put available in the budget for various committees, and I only have the headline figures in front of me. I don't have the detail of it, so I can't remember exactly what the figures were. But it does feel to me that rather than deal with this piecemeal, perhaps there's a bigger piece of work that needs to be done here, which considers, in the light of the pandemic, considers how the council can best deploy the resources it has available to it in order to support the absolutely fantastic work that voluntary organisations have been doing. I just feel like we could do a bigger piece of work, and possibly a better piece of work.
Thank you, Richard. That makes sense. So really and truly, when we meet again, probably after the elections, you'll have an update for us, which will be quite helpful. I've just got a question for Simon. Obviously, you've sort of spoken about Essex and Basildon Council and the NHS putting funding into the BBW CVS. Have you ever approached the parish councils?
No, it's a very good question. No, I haven't personally, no. To be honest, when I started last December, it was only a couple of months, and I basically wrote a strategic plan for us to develop, and then obviously the pandemic hit, and I haven't really had that opportunity to sort of take that approach. But it's very much worth considering.
Yeah. I mean, parish councils don't have no cap on their spending, and each parish might have their own view. I mean, Billericay Town Council is quite a large, sizable area. I mean, if they was outside of Basildon, it'd probably be their own local authority if they was in Norfolk, the population. So I think that might be a fair point. Do any other members wish to speak on this item, please? Right, let's go to the recommendation. On page 21. Right, I'm going to the recommendation on page 22, and I shall call each member alphabetically to vote on it. Councillor Gordon, how will you be voting?
Vote in favour.
Councillor Henry? Sorry.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Morris?
I'm going to abstain on this one, Chairman.
Councillor Schrader?
In favour.
Councillor Yacoub?
Favour.
And I shall be voting in favour. That item's passed. And now we go to the town twinning, and we have Mr. Robert Sheridan and I believe Tony Ball on this item. So, Mr. Sheridan, if you want to do your presentation with our colleague at Essex County Council and former leader of Basildon, Tony Ball, you have the floor.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to explain what we've been doing in the past. I thought we were doing it for the past year, but it looks on the report as if you want us to do it for 3 years. But we were primarily focusing on the activities of the association during the pandemic, which was quite a challenge, as you can imagine, as most of the the actual work that we do is travelling abroad, and that or having incoming visits, which has been very severely restricted. However, I did manage to send out a couple of films to you all last week. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at it, but it would have given you, if you have, a flavour of the sort of activities that we managed to produce along with our twinning partners last year, which was quite incredible considering the restrictions that we had. So most, obviously, of things that went on did so virtually. And also, you know, when you consider that to have picked up 5 new volunteers, was quite an achievement, considering that, as I say, no activities physically went on. But the big change that happened last year across the twinning was the development of the young twinning section. The idea had come about in 2019, but it hadn't actually gone to fruition. It started in January, just before the lockdown, with a visit between 2 English kids meeting 3 German kids. That's now grown to 23 members. And actually, some of the activities that they've been doing are quite inspirational. We've got one group of, I think it's half a dozen young people using Minecraft to build a village. So you've got 3 Germans and 3 English kids actually working together on the internet, building a village together and discussing other aspects while they're going. We've also got a number of our initial young twins going off to university very shortly, but they're actually communicating with their counterparts in Germany, particularly, who are doing the same sort of things. And we've now got one girl who, from Beauchamp School, who's looking to go to university in Paris, which, as you know, is not too far from Mo, and using contacts there. So we've been very active. We've actually been involved in running and cycling competitions. So the kids themselves, particularly the children, although adults did join in, have been walking to like EAP or running races against each other, timing themselves and putting their scores online and commenting, etc. So most of the activities that we had attempted to do couldn't happen, but they have found quite novel ways of keeping themselves chatting to each other and keeping involved. As I say, I don't know how many of you managed to watch the films that we produced for you, but that would have given you a flavour, not just about the activities that we did manage to produce last year, but also the feedback from some of the children who have been involved in the activities, you know, that we've been producing over the years. Tony, do you want to add anything?
If I may, with your permission, Chairman. Thank you. I think reading the report, what the committee have got to decide is what they want from twinning. I think it's quite clear if you look back at the 3 years statistics that are in the report, that the Twinning Association has achieved and surpassed what they've been asked to do. And this is, again, I would ask colleagues to be mindful of, this is all by volunteers. We are separate from the council. We come together to try and do what we think is good. And obviously, when I was leader of Basden Council, I was very supportive of twinning and set the service level agreements we had then, which actually did include economic development. But the main aim of twinning is to garner good relationships between the 3 towns that have the commonality coming together after the Second World War, and therefore to encourage the youth in particular to learn each other's cultures. And for some, and I must admit, one of the great joys that I've had is seeing the faces of some of the young people, their first ever trip abroad. They had to find out how to get a passport, you know, from their parents. Their parents maybe hadn't been abroad before. And the excitement as they were getting on the boat from the coach and then entering Heiligen House or Mo with their different architecture, different languages, and different culture. Certainly in the last 6-7 years, economic development has been part of that, and we have engaged with the business groups or the business group in Heiligen House, and so we do have that relationship. I mean, that can be built on. But what I would say is that perhaps the business group, the Basildon business group, could be used to try and engage with the business group there. Very happy to make that happen with council facilitation. But I would hate, and I would really wonder if the primary purpose of twinning as a community volunteer group, trying to do garner good relationships between 3 towns, 3 countries, if that was not its primary purpose anymore, I would just think it would lose what it set out to do and what it has delivered on. Absolutely, no problem. We would very much and have done build all kinds of relationships, whether they be community, whether they be business. But I think it would be a mistake, if I may say, Mr. Chairman, to come away from the community engagement that twinning was set up to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Henry is indicated to speak. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. As I mentioned in the opening remarks of council or of the committee, I have an interest in this, and I've watched it in the time that I've been elected. I've watched what goes on with twinning in the time I've been elected, and I'm constantly surprised by how adept they are at reaching out to other people, how adept they are at reaching out to local people that people might, otherwise have. The opportunities that this provides for our local kids is huge. And, one of the fantastic aspects about twinning is the fact that it's not really a political thing at all. It doesn't really make any difference who's in the top seat here. They go off and they represent Basildon. It's a Basildon thing. It's not a Tory Basildon or a Labour or Alliance Basildon thing. They've gone off and banged the drum as loud for Basildon under David Harrison or David Burton Sampson, just as much as they have for Mo Larkin or Don Morris. In fact, it is what it is. I do think that twinning's roots have to rely, entirely on community, because that's where its value is. Yes, we can work on business and we can work on bringing, revenue streams into the council, and those are all admirable things and all necessary things, but not at the expense of diluting the very, very values that twinning associations across the country, and we're, I would say, a fairly successful one, have been built on. And we've been doing this an awful long time. We've been doing this an incredible amount of time. And the fact that we've gone through what can only be described as a hellish year for most of Britain, if not the world, that passion and that drive and that commitment from all of those volunteers is still there. And when you join these things, you suddenly find yourself on mailing lists that are constantly busy all the time with people, rallying around and supporting each other. We've all, like in every walk of life, we've seen, that this person's passed away. We've seen that that's happened or the others happened. We've seen, other people, not necessarily, in other countries, but here, supporting each other and encouraging each other and bolstering the communities. And I think, for whatever business acumen we may glean from working groups and business international business relations with Basildon Council, something will be lost if we allow the community aspect of this to be handed over. I do think, again, and I don't know whether this was part of the budget or what have you, but I do think also to halve the budget. I have concerns about the budget being halved. I have concerns about, will that then, if it does go over to economic development, are they price matching the money that we've got? Because it seems to me that anything that's funded by communities should certainly report to communities rather than somewhere else. So I think there's some I've got a lot of concerns with certainly the second recommendation on this, and I do think that it sort of misunderstands the value and the virtue of town twinning thus far. And I think it's a real shame that if we allow this to go to another committee that won't hold the same perhaps principles of community aspiration as we do. So that would be my view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. I shall call the next following speakers up in order, so you know your hands have been noted. It will next be Councillor Morris, then Councillor Schrader, and the final hand I've seen go up is Councillor Golden. Councillor Morris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, as a former mayor of Basildon, I can tell you the work that the Twinning Association do is outstanding. The relationships they build with Mo and Heiligen House are you can't put a value on that. And I think to do what the administration are trying to do with it, it fails to understand what the Twinning Association is about. So I would appeal to you, please, don't go ahead with this. I certainly won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Schrader.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to add my thanks to the association for everything that they've been doing, both before the pandemic and actually the astonishing amount they've still managed to do even during the pandemic. And I did watch the videos, which I thought were very good. I think the Forget Never project has been a particular highlight. I think that was very, very worthwhile, and it was very well done. I do have concerns, like my colleagues, about the proposal to move Twinning to economic development, and particularly concerned about the proposal to halve the budget. And I can remember being on the, I think it was this committee, I forget how many years ago, but it was under your chairmanship, sir. I remember when we moved the motion, or whatever you want to call it, the proposal to increase the budget. And I remember it had the support at the time of Councillor Gordon, I think, was on that committee, and former councillor Katie Block, I seem to recall. I think she seconded it, actually. And at the time, we were certainly very keen that Twinning should continue and should be encouraged, and we recognised the economic development potential that Twinning produces as a kind of happy byproduct of the activities that the association is undertaking. And certainly the Twinning Association has always banged the drum for Basildon and done so very, very well. And as a former chairman of the Economic Development Committee, or its predecessor committee anyway, I recognise that potential contribution. But I think that the concern that has been expressed is very valid, which is that if we transfer Twinning to the Economic Development Committee, we're kind of focusing on that happy byproduct and undermining, to an extent, and certainly overlooking the primary purpose of Twinning. And I think it is important that it should remain under the community's remit, because that is the first and foremost purpose of Twinning. And I think we risk completely missing the point. I am concerned that the conditions that are proposed in the new arrangements will add requirements for the community volunteers. And I think we need to remember that although the council is giving money to the Twinning Association to fund the work that it's doing, it's all staffed by volunteers. These are all people that are giving up their time free of charge. No one's getting rich off of this. So I think we need to be mindful of that when it comes to the additional activities we're asking them to undertake. So I am very concerned about that, and I would be very loath to move Twinning from the community's remit into economic development, because I worry it fundamentally misses the main point of Twinning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Councillor Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Schrader is correct. It's one of the few times, Councillor Smith, where I've actually voted in a divergent manner to yourself, was to recognise what twinning has done for our town, the benefits made, and for that period of time to increase their grant funding. Indeed, the motion was seconded by Councillor Block as well, so there's nothing incorrect about that there. I also think it's important to put on record, absolutely, totally recognise the great work of the volunteers, who participate in twinning. They make an incredible difference to the lives of young people. And some of the projects that I visited and I've been privileged to witness, have been absolutely fantastic. I would be very concerned if suddenly, by moving to a different committee, all of a sudden twinning completely lost its focus on community. I really do not feel that by simply changing what committee it sits under, that all of a sudden that fantastic community focus and ethos and brilliant work of twinning around developing communities and relationships across the people we're twinned with will just suddenly dissolve and disappear. So I think I understand the concerns from the opposition, and I'm sure if I was sitting in their shoes, I'd probably be saying similar things. But this is definitely not a move to remove the community focus from Basildon twinning, and neither can we, because as has been pointed out by other members, it is run by volunteers. I think what this is about is recognising, as others have pointed out, that twinning does have, as well as the community benefits, it does have economic benefits as well. And I think potentially by sitting it under the Economic Development Committee, there could be further conversations, and they're better placed to have those conversations about what support twinning needs to unlock even more economic development. And I'm certainly sure that the chairman of that committee will progress those conversations. But absolutely, the community focus will not be lost. And I really feel strongly about that. I do not feel that just by the fact something sits under one committee or another necessarily makes a huge lot of difference. But I feel that there's potentially opportunities by it sitting under economic development that could be unlocked. I really don't feel like, and I'm sure if anything was lost in that, then members would quite rightly raise it accordingly. In terms of the extra workload and demand that Councillor Schrader mentioned, I would be interested to understand if he has any specific examples of that, just to help me understand, or maybe Twinning can answer where they think that this would create more significant workload onto them, that's outside of what they're already doing, because I think that's an important point that we don't want to lose sight of.
Thank you, Councillor Golden. Mr. Sheridan or Councillor Ball, did you want to come back on that final point of Councillor Golden?
I'll come back on a couple of things that have been said, if I may, Chair. Firstly, I think it should be recognised, despite the fact that it was a difficult year last year, Basildon Twinning Association is being held in great esteem in other parts of the country. I had a phone call a couple of weeks back from Harlow, whose twinning association was defunct about 10 years ago. And they rang me up because they had been told if they want to resurrect the committee with new committee members, they should contact Basildon because they have a thriving association, which is not generally viewed across the country. Most places in the country that we have looked at have twinning committees that have either been going for the last 30 years with people in their 70s and 80s and are collapsing because there's no future volunteers coming forward. Whereas actually ours is being heralded as being one that's going in the opposite direction and growing. And so we're being held in great esteem in various areas for the work that we are doing with volunteers. I think, as Councillor Tony Ball mentioned, all our volunteers, when we go abroad, all pay for themselves. There's no money taken out of the grant from the people serving on the committee of twinning. The money that the council give us and the money we raise ourselves all go to supporting new residents, children, schools and all the other functions that we perform, the money goes entirely to them. Okay, so the volunteers are literally that, volunteers, and all self-funded. That's the first thing I wanted to mention. The other thing, of course, that we've got to take into consideration with the budgets that we've discussed at great length in our last committee meeting at Twinning, is the increased costs that are put on us through Brexit. Now, I personally was a Remainer, as you all know, and I've got committee members who weren't, which is also worth an acknowledgement. But the one thing I will say is they've all accepted that the cost to doing our work that we've been doing so far has actually increased. I'll just give you one example. When we take the children abroad on something like a football tour or something like that, you take with you an e-hit card, a free treatment card. I've now got my new G-hit card, which is the new general one being put in place of the e-hit card, and it's £30 a head. So that's an additional cost that isn't being considered at the moment. Those of you who read the documentation coming out from the government about trade, so if we were to do something like the Stadfest, where we take Basildon produce to sell at a trade fair in Germany, that is now going to cost us colossal amounts of money in regulation to get anything across the border. And so there's additional cost there. So instead of reducing the grant that is being offered, the challenges to us will be to try and maintain the standards that we've maintained so far with the current one, let alone reducing it. So there's a big problem there. And we're still not clear from the last meeting that we had with officers and councillors what it is that's going to be expected of a group of volunteers who have got no business acumen at all, most of whom have got day jobs, so do all their work on behalf of Twinning in the evening or weekends, with no experience of running a trade fair or discussing contracts with different companies across the board. And to do so by asking them to do that out of the kindness of their own hearts is one thing. And the other thing I wish to point out is if the grant is halved, the people who will suffer won't be the children that we take out from Wickford, who've already told me they're quite prepared to put their hands in their pockets to do it. But the children from Vange will probably not be in that position. So the casualties will be the children in the poorer parts of the borough, who probably will no longer be able to take part in the events that we run. So that will be the consequence. If you're all happy with that, that's fine. But we're particularly not happy with that, because it will certainly reduce the service that we're offering. And what the council are asking us to do is to increase the load that they're putting onto the committee. And although, as Tony's already said, we do already liaise with businesses. I remember taking a group of businessmen from Heiligen House, the tractor plant, okay, and we asked the council and the economic development to join us, and nobody was able to do so. So that was just one example. And Tony Ball, just prior to the lockdown, was in negotiations with ProCat in Basildon, the Bochum University campus that's just been set up in Heiligen House, and the Technical College in Moe to talk about exchanging apprentices. Obviously, though, that's been stifled by the pandemic at the moment, but that is an ongoing project that will be picked up again once we can actually move forward. Okay, so these things are already being done in the present circumstances. But I'm really concerned about the expertise that Twinning will have in doing what I think the council are asking of them. So perhaps we're looking forward to council officers joining us on our committee.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Who is the head of economics development? Is that you, Tom Ash?
No, it's Jim Sims.
Did you want to pick up on any of the points Mr. Sheridan made?
Nothing particularly to add, other than we've had one very productive meeting with the Twinning Association are looking forward to continuing to maintain a dialogue with them. We thought some of the ideas that we explored around trade exchanges, factory visits, and apprenticeship exchanges were good good examples of economic development activity that could be further built upon.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Councillor Yacoub, did you want to speak on this item before I wrap up and take it to the vote?
No.
Tony, did you want to come back after Councillor Yacoub? Councillor Yacoub, did you want to speak on this before I go to Councillor Ball?
No, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Ball, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I'm here as Tony Ball, Vice Chairman of the Basildon Twinning Association.
Well, I'm always show difference to a cabinet member at Essex. You never know when you might need an hand with something.
Well, that's kind of you. Thank you. And just following on from Bob's comments about the mixture of political views and none on the committee, and the views on Brexit. I think it was the last time you and I campaigned on the same side was during 2016, after many years previously campaigning on the same side before that in Barking and Dagenham, as well as in Basildon. So I think that just there's a bit of evidence on the fact that politics does not intrude into the Twinning Association. And of course, the greatly missed former Labour councillor Richard Llewellyn was very much involved with Twinning as well, before he sadly passed away. Chairman, just a couple of things, if I may, in response to what the committee have said. And again, Bob has mentioned the fact that actually the 12,000 budget or grant that was agreed for a reason, and that was the increased costs of having to take trips abroad as a result of Brexit. And that's okay, it's just a fact. It's not a criticism of Brexit from my point of view, it's just the way it is. Chairman, I take the points that have been made about the aspiration of councillors on this committee for the Twinning Association to carry on with its community work. But I refer to the report when it speaks about future proposals. And in the first paragraph, it mentions what happened in February 2019. But then it says, it is recommended that the 6,000 per annum from the grants to organisations budget under this committee is transferred to the Economic Development Team under the remit of Economic Development and Recovery Committee to support their work in delivering stronger economic development outcomes from our international relationships through activities such as trade missions, factory visits, apprenticeship exchanges, etc. The Economic Development Recovery Committee will be undertaking a review of how best to ensure that this funding makes the greatest impact in our international economic development work, and are keen to liaise with the Basildon Twinning Association as to possible opportunities that working with them may provide, as well as seeking understanding of possible opportunities. No mention of the community work within that future proposal report. So I do understand the wish of this committee, Chairman, that the community work of the volunteers of this organisation, and we did do an email round of all our volunteers, and I can say that none of them were in favour of moving to economic development. But within that committee report, there is no commitment to the council wanting the Twinning Association to still carry out its primary aim of community involvement for engaging with schools, young people, community groups to garner greater relationship between our three towns. And so unless that is changed in some way, Chairman, I stand by my original comment, A, that the funding, I think that came through last time of the increase to 12,000 has been justified to continue. And B, it would be a mistake. And the community work that's done by the Twinning Association, unless this report is amended in some way, could well be lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Gordon and Henry, if I bring you in, this will be about no points rather than sort of rehashing what we've spoken about.
No, thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Henry, that was me.
Sorry, I do apologise,
And
Councillor.
can all members take your hands down because it's confusing. I've got Councillor Morris, Councillor Henry, and Councillor Golden. I did see Councillor Henry's hands move, but what I said applies to all members. If you're going to want to speak on this, has to be something fresh.
Well, it's if you're coming to me, Chairman, it is to highlight the point I asked in my original point, and I don't think that aspect was answered by yourself or officers. No matter which committee this comes under, it says here that the committee approves the permanent transfer of £6,000 per annum to the grants over to the other committee. I asked in my original question, will that be matched at the other? Will there be a contribution? I can't see where you've gone. You've moved. Will there be a contribution from the other committee to match that? Will we now have literally no more than £6,000 per year, or will the other committee be chipping in as well?
Thank you, Councillor Henry. I will address that point shortly. Councillor Gordon, do you want to come back? Remember, it has to be something fresh.
No, I was just going to come back in terms of Councillor Ball suggested some form of an amendment just to make sure that the community development work is captured. And I was just going to add that two things really. Firstly, in terms of managing the fallout of Brexit and the increase in costs and things like that, there's no better team in the council than the economic development team to deliver that advice, guidance and expert support, because that's their bread and butter day in, day out. So, you know, that's important to consider. Secondly, I think maybe, and I'm going to sort of be a bit speak freehand here in terms of the recommendation on page 36, point 2, perhaps we could just add a little bit at the end saying to support their work in delivering stronger economic development outcomes from our international relationships by continuing their community engagement and development operation, or words to that effect. I think it is important, and Councillor Ball's made a good point about, you know, that building community capacity work. My personal view is economic development and community can sometimes be hand in hand. Good, healthy communities are often more economically productive, and I think that, you know, that you can't have a conversations about economy without having a conversation about community. But probably best not to get too tied up in the philosophy of it. But I was wondering, perhaps maybe all members would feel comfortable if we could maybe change the recommendation just to capture County Councillor Ball's point there. Chair, I'll leave it there.
Sarah, did you get written down what Councillor Golden said?
No, I didn't all of it. If Councillor Gordon, do you want to say it again?
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, sorry, no, do apologise. So I think just at the end of the statement, a recommendation 2, we could perhaps add something like, you know, from our international relationships, by supporting or by continuing their work on community development and engagement. And I feel that may capture, or I hope it would capture, Councillor Ball's, not necessarily the point, but just the point about not losing sight of that community ethos. And I welcome comments from the opposition on that, because that's not the intention. We don't want to lose that community focus.
Okay, so we've got an amendment on the floor. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder in Councillor Henry. Let's take the amendment to the vote.
Before we,
yes, Councillor Henry.
Could we answer the question about the £6,000? I'm very happy to.
I'm going to do that when I wrap up. I want to deal with the amendment first. Councillor Golden, how will you be voting on the amendment?
I'll support it, Chairman.
Councillor Henry?
I'll support it.
Councillor Schrader?
Support it.
Councillor Morris? I can't hear. No, sorry, Councillor Morris.
I will support that.
Thank you. Councillor Yacoub?
Favour.
And I shall be voting in favour. Right, I shall wrap up this item and then we'll go to the vote. I will start with Councillor Henry's question about will this be match funded. There was a meeting between myself, Councillor McGurran, who chairs the Economic Development Committee, Mr Sheridan and Councillor Tony Bolt, on the ethos of going forward to generate jobs in the borough. And when this question of money come up, well, my view is there's no limit. If you can get big businesses from France and Germany into Basildon, you wouldn't split hairs over putting another 6 grand. If it cost another 20 grand in, and it was making Basildon Council 100 grand in business rates, it's economic sense. Now, the whole purpose of this, I look at this as someone who passionately has campaigned for Brexit, even before it was called Brexit. Now we're out. Unfortunately, the present Prime Minister inherited, it wasn't a heaven-ready deal, it was a dog food dinner he inherited. He had to tweak here and there to get it through Parliament to get the first steps of Brexit done. And unfortunately, we have seen over-officious busybodies on our borders interfering with trade. And you only wish Mrs Thatcher was in, so I do wonder she'd send the SAS in to sort out Dutch customs officers seizing British truckers and rolls. Nevertheless, we have to work with what we've got. Now, where we're twinned with in Germany, it's in the heart of the Ruhr Valley, the capital for heavy industry. What a fantastic place to be twinned with. We should be reaching out, working to them. I mean, us as a borough will be looking at 20,000 homes. Wouldn't they want to sell us their steel? Show us their methods of construction? That's a point of consideration. Elsewhere, we're twinned with France. They sell us a lot of popular products. And when you, as I said at the meeting I referred to earlier, in our new town centre, some might say, leave the town to die. We don't want to update the town. But this administration is about renewing our dead town centre. Wouldn't it be great if through town twinning, we had a bar set up in Basildon town centre by a business person from Mo, or a beer German stall from where we're set up in Heiligenhaus in Germany? Wouldn't that be a fine thing? They'd be paying business rates to the council. They'd be employing Basildon people. And you've got that trade there. That's what I'm looking for. So I shall now go to the recommendations. One moment, members. And it's been amended on page 35. So I shall call each member out alphabetically. Councillor Gordon, how will you be voting?
Want the recommendation, Chairman.
Councillor Henry?
I'd like some clarity on the answer for the funding, please.
Councillor Henry, I've answered that. If they can bring in, Councillor Henry, I've answered that. We're going to go to, we are voting on it now. How will you be voting on this, please, Henry? Councillor.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Councillor Morris, how will you be voting?
I'm going to abstain on this one, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Schrader?
I'm voting against.
Thank you. Councillor Yacoub?
In favour.
And I shall be voting in favour. Thank you, Mr Sheridan. Thank you, Councillor Ball. You're very welcome to sit through the rest of the meeting. We now go to Together for Safer Communities in the post-COVID world, and we've got Paula Mason here. You have the floor.
Evening, councillors. The Together for Safer Communities initiative has been suspended throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and following the announcements to start to relax restrictions, members asked for an outline of how the initiative will be reinstated. The initial phase will be to contact members, asking them to indicate their intention to host a meeting in their ward as previously. And the second phase is to work with partners to reinstate the initiative. The road shows in the Eastgate, in Pitsea and in the other areas that we've had them before. So we'll start to look at those community engagement events. The report is very brief. It is just asking members to approve the approach to reinstate the initiative. We will only reinstate once full restrictions have been relaxed. So we won't be looking before June to start to plan that initiative. Thank you.
Paula, I like your presentation, short, direct and to the point. I think before we get going, I think we need to add the same caveat that if members are going to have a Together for Safer Communities meeting in their ward, there will be a requirement of 500 letters printed and delivered by the members to make sure we get the turnout. Because when we look at the first batches of meetings we held, the ones where no letters went out, the attendance was rather poor. And in areas where we had a letter go out, the attendance got really, really busy. I mean, as you know, with the first meeting we done in Leigh Chapel South, in my ward, Nevermain, it was standing room only. Whereas in other wards where no letters went out, and in areas we wanted to be in, like the St Martin's meeting, I think we had about 10 people in the first meeting because no letters went out. So we've got to keep that requirement there. Yes, when it's COVID safe and COVID secure and the rules permit, members should be encouraged to organise a Together for Safer Communities meeting in their ward, but they need to write to their constituents. Putting a hashtag like on social media only reaches a very, very small number of people. What I also want looked at this year, normally when we buy the crime fighting equipment, which eats up most of the £10,500 budget, we've looked at window alarms, those sort of what I like to call the door stop alarms, yeah. You know, those sort of triangular ones you might want to put against your fridge door, but we know they're used for other things. So I think what we need to focus on really with that budget is personal alarms, especially after these terrible incidents we've had locally. I mean, I've had a lot of residents contact myself about being ladies or vulnerable people afraid to walk out after dusk. And it's a shame we can't have these meetings now to distribute these personal alarms. So I think, Paula, if we can have a chat offline to look through how we allocate the actual money spending on personal crime fighting equipment, but I do think we need to spend quite a bit extra this year on personal alarms. And are you able, Paula, to get different ones? You know, the other year we done a trial run of those yellow ones with a little torch, and we can get those.
Yeah, we can certainly look at what's available and we can just agree whatever ones you want purchased.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a mix because there were some football ones and love art ones. You know, it doesn't look like it didn't attract the attention that people might feel vulnerable if they've got like a love art or a football personal alarm attached to their bag. It doesn't look like a personal alarm. So obviously, I think we need to make sure people feel comfortable as possible. Do any other members wish to speak on Together for Safe Communities? Anyone? That looks like a no. Right then, let's find the right page recommendation. Page 45. I shall call each member in. Right. So I'm going to the recommendations on pages 45, and I'll call each member in alphabetically. Councillor Golden, how will you be voting?
I support the recommendation.
Councillor Henry?
Support it. Thank you.
Councillor Morris?
Or
Councillor Schrader?
Or
Councillor Yacoub?
Favour.
Glad you said in favour. People might think we're playing golf, all these fools. Thank you. Right, we shall now go on to the next item, which is the West Ham Foundation collaborative work on page 49. Grant, do you want to lead on that one, please?
Yes, always happy to, Councillor. Absolutely. Right. So this is a report I'm bringing to committee just to discuss principally for noting that the work that the council is doing alongside our partners of the West Ham United Foundation. So this is information on work that's ongoing, what's developing and planned work. And it's very much about how we provide opportunities to local residents through this exciting partnership. So the West Ham United Foundation is separate to the football club in itself, which is and is an independent charity that's been operating for over 30 years now. They look to utilise the power of sport to unite our communities, or unite communities, I should say. And we are looking specifically in this area to grow our joint delivery over the next 12 months. So as you will see in the report, there is a whole series of programmes here that we're either delivering already, such as the Healthy Hammers, Healthy Minds and the School Holiday Programme, to others that we are looking to develop as we move forward, like the Premier League Primary Stars, etc. I wasn't intending to go through every single project, but of course, I'm happy to answer questions as best I can on these specific projects. But we wanted to just showcase the work that was going on in this field. It's important to say that part of this is therefore already funded through existing programs like the School Holiday Programme and Mental Health Fund, and then others we are working on how we might be able to fund it. So the recommendations therefore are quite clear, and what we're looking for is the committee to endorse the work that we're doing and for us to go and seek the necessary grant funding to deliver the wider programme should the committee think the work is worth expanding on. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Grant. Any member wish to speak on it? Wow. Thanks, something's in the water. Thank you ever so much for that, Grant. Oh, Councillor Golden.
Yes, sorry, I'm unusually talkative tonight. I just wanted to put on my record for the thanks that both our officers. Just want to put on record my thanks to both our officers, who have been really agile in responding to sort of this piece of work, and also West Ham United. I'm not a West Ham fan, but I think it's absolutely fantastic that we've got support from organisations that are a really big part of our community in Basildon. If any of you ever go canvassing, football is number one on the list. I've probably been asked what football team do I support more than any other question whilst being on the doorstep. And I think it's really great, and it's very telling that we've attracted this piece of work to be done in Basildon, because I very much see us as a bit of an anchor institution, as an institution that holds the glue of holds community together, and there's lots of different parts of our community. So yeah, the programs are excellent. I hope that we can attract more funding to them. They'll make a real difference to some of our residents' lives, and yeah, I've only got good things to say. Thank you.
It's not Arsenal, is it?
It's Southend United, just for the record.
Oh well, everybody has their problem.
Councillor Cope, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this and the opportunities that are in store for local children and young people at the back of this. I wanted to ask about the project around raising mental health awareness. I noted that there would be 240 pupils, and I was wondering what the process is in choosing them, and also who runs these. I know from my own experience that in Basildon we have some really cool businesses such as Relax Kids Essex, Mindful Magic, and they do like workshops for children and even for parents on like raising mental health awareness from a very young age. And I know that there's a lot of children, especially through this lockdown, that have come back and parents have come back and really praised them on how strategies and tools that they use during the sessions had really helped them to cope through difficult times. So I was wondering like who would be delivering these?
Grant?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So with regards to which schools are being involved, I'm meeting with the West Ham United Foundation tomorrow. So I'm really picking up that with them about how we are going to be promoting that and ensuring we get a wider spread as possible. So I can't specifically answer that, but clearly we would want to see a spread across the borough in relation to this. The foundation itself and their very skilled and experienced staff do principally most of the delivering, Councillor. That said, I think you make an excellent point about what we've already got happening in the borough. So I'm very keen, therefore, that I'll speak to the foundation about how we reach out to those people to might therefore offer opportunities where they've already got work going on, already got funding on, where we might be able to reach even more young people or children on that basis. So I think that's a really important point. I mean, it's also really important for us to speak to the schools that are engaging to know kind of what their engagement with those services are locally. So I think you make very good points, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take that away so as I can formulate that and really pick up and ensure that we're not letting these things happening in isolation and getting a greater bang for our buck, which I know is exactly what the foundation will want as well. So thank you for raising it.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to speak? Anyone? Wow. Where is Councillor Rimmer when you want to pad out a meeting? Now I know the culprit is for making these meetings last so long. I'd just like to say thank you. I mean, everyone moans. I mean, I think this time last year, Pete was moaning about footballers and this, that, and the other, and their salaries when the first lockdown started. Not off. And when you see all that sort of negativity aimed at footballers, I think it's really great. We've got this, and all the work the council's done and the leader. And I'm not going to attempt to say that footballer's name because I really don't do football. Grant, what's his name? Please help the chairman. So I'm looking stupid.
I presume you're going to mean Mark Noble.
That's it. That's
Okay.
the man. And he's been really good with last year making donations to all the things we've done. I think this is really good. This is really, really good. So I'm going to put the two recommendations to the vote on page 49. Can everyone unmute themselves? Councillor Golden, how are you voting?
In favour.
Councillor Henry?
In favour.
Councillor Morris?
In favour.
Councillor Schrader?
Favour.
Councillor Yacoub?
In favour.
And I should be voting in favour. And the only footballing joke I remember is the one from the film Do Death Do Us Part, where Alf shouts out, "Don't forget Stalingrad" to the Russian linesman, for what that's worth. Anyway, so we're going on to connected community strategy, and I'm guessing that's you, Grant.
More silent. Yes, it is, Councillor. Yes.
Please, you have to.
Thank you. So again, very pleased to be back speaking about this report as well. You may remember that in January this year, I came with the Connected Communities policy, and that was passed by the committee, I'm grateful to say. And I promised at that point that we'd be bringing the strategy back very quickly, because this is an incredibly important piece of work in our borough. Very much building on many of the conversations we've already had tonight in relation to the work that the CVS and Twinning and do, and our ongoing work with the West Ham United Foundation now. So it works very, very well. And of course, also very excited to see some of the things on the agenda after myself in relation to inclusion, diversity and the like. So a very strong thread running through tonight's meeting. So since the policy was agreed, a consultation exercise, a very extensive consultation exercise has been taking place from that period, or even before it. So as we were readying ourselves, and over 30 community and voluntary sector groups now participated in that, talking about kind of the policy vision that was set in the policy and how we collectively could achieve this. Also, on top of that, many various council departments as well. So everything that you will see in the enclosure, which is the strategy itself, has come from very extensive, thorough conversations with partners from numerous sectors, and we've listened very intently. And I think Simon from the CVS is still on the call, and I thank him for the work that the CVS have done in responding to this important work, and also galvanising the voluntary sector around it. It's important to say that this is a strategy that sits under, obviously, not only this committee but my service itself. But it's not a strategy for my service. It is something that we want to influence far and wide, the work that we're doing within our borough, and that's very important to us. So what's been really, really clear from our conversations is that we will need to manoeuvre much of our work to become more inclusive, to create more inclusive social movements, rather than a series of one-off time-limited projects. And I think that that's a really, really important point, and that's what the strategy is trying to do, rather than saying we will do this project for 3 months or we will do this project for 6 months. It's trying to set a very clear strategic framework for how we're going to work with our communities, work with our partners, adapt as a council to be able to support our community needs. So you will see within the strategy itself, at the end, there is an action plan. I would say that action plan is important that it stays fluid and is redressed each year. I know I said that earlier with the CVS work, but I think that's particularly important, rather than holding ourselves to something for 5 years, when we've definitely seen the seismic changes over the last year, and the importance of being able to react and pivot at the appropriate times. So again, without going through every aspect of it, I'm very, very happy to answer any questions on the strategy, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Grant. Did any member wish to speak on this? Wow. Councillor Yacoub?
Yeah, just a quick
Please.
one. I basically just had a few notes on the point around having a very clear pathway on how to get involved. Because there was a point around one of the biggest issues was that a lot of things were happening, but people were just not aware of it. And I was wondering if you could just elaborate on that. Would that be like maybe through the app or like a process through the website? How would that work?
Yeah, so over the last year, we've through our local delivery pilot work, one of the things we wanted to do was really be able to galvanise some of those. We knew that there's an incredible army, I guess, of grassroots community workers, whether they're in local authorities or housing associations, right the way through to some of our supermarket providers have community officers, for instance, within them. But a lot of them were doing very, very important, very, very good work, but in isolation. And that I think was probably seeing duplication and probably wastage. So we've formed something called the Community Involvement Network, which has got about 60 people on it now, which is really, really powerful. I'm really pleased as a measure of success. It's one of those things, although we've been working on, the council's not even chairing it. It's being chaired by our colleagues in Swarm Housing, which is really, really important that we distribute that leadership as well. But although we were kind of, I guess, it's a big lesson for us. We were kind of patting ourselves on the back. We're saying we're getting 60 people and we've got all these ideas coming. When we started to do the consultation, people were saying, "Oh, but we need a forum where people come together. We don't know what's going on. This is happening." So we really, I think that's an important point that we need to kind of just check and challenge ourselves regularly. So although that positive work's going on, we're trying to really, really build that community involvement network to get as many partners involved as possible. And what we'd really like to do is start to co-commission projects underneath this strategy across sectors on that basis, working with the communities, taking perhaps prioritising where we do that work as well, so as we know it make the greatest change. So I think things like apps and stuff are always really important, but I think what we definitely know, and we knew it before, and we definitely saw it during the COVID pandemic, is what people need is people that are up and down on their streets doing great work. We are really, really keen under this piece of work, councillor, that we speak to those, what we're calling community heroes, those people that they're perhaps less volunteers than they're not volunteers in as we may understand them, with a tabard and a high vis jacket and a note and a notepad. Much more kind of people that are just making things happen and showing that compassion and support in their streets. So we're now trying to work with those guys as well to kind of say to them, what's the next thing? What's the next thing that really excites you? How can we support you? Is it around providing homework clubs for kids? Is it around food poverty? Is it around physical activity? Perhaps it's none of them, and perhaps they're going to move on. But we really want to be able to kind of galvanise them to say, you've shown that community leadership, and we're not here to take it over. We're not here to tell you what to do either. But if we can help you deliver your next aims, then that's where we really want to see ourselves going. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Grant. Did any other members wish to speak? I did see Councillor Gould's light come on. Right then, well, we go to the recommendation. I should call each member out alphabetically. Councillor Golden, how will you be voting?
I support the recommendation.
Councillor Henry?
In favour.
Councillor Morris? No, we can't hear you, mate.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Schrader?
In favour.
Councillor Yacoub?
In favour.
And I shall be voting in favour. Well, now we go on to the inclusion and diversity new strategic approach on pages 71 to 73. Do we have Dengue here?
Yes, I'm here, Chairman. I'm not sure why my video is not coming on. Can everybody see me?
No, but we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's rather strange. Okay. I will go through, good evening, councillors. I will go through the report, but not in its entirety, and just open up for questions. So in February last year, we adopted 5 objectives which are listed in the report. In the past, we developed inclusion and diversity strategies and then set out specific actions to deliver against the objectives. However, following recent changes to the services and having reflected on the most appropriate approach going forward, it's been felt that it's better to mainstream the agenda into everything we do. And to do that, we are looking at doing the following. The first is reviewing the role and responsibility of the Inclusion and Diversity Manager, and taking that, and then second is taking on a whole systems-based approach. Thirdly is to ensure that inclusion and diversity outcomes are part of or integral to the delivery of the corporate program. Integrating proposed activities. These are activities that we identified through engagement from 2017 October right around until 2019. That's with the community, with our partners and with staff. What we've done, as Grant alluded to, is integrate some of those into other existing strategies, such as the connecting community strategy, the workforce strategy, and the digital inclusion strategy. These are just some examples. We also plan to undertake a review of where the responsibility best lies for community cohesion priorities and events and activities, as well as review how best to support the community interest groups that are currently directly supported by the Inclusion and Diversity Service. Now, I've provided you with a list of some of the objectives, which were mainly around delivering events. I believe this was a request previously from Councillor Rimmer, and it just lists the various events, 11 of them, which we delivered either in partnership with the community or directly ourselves. And other activities we have continued to deliver outside of events, which include the Inclusive Basildon Borough Initiative, working with Things Made Public to ensure that the facilities and the arts project takes into consideration all communities, working to produce bespoke online and physical promotional materials for the census, working with faith leaders to educate them on the importance of social distancing, and in some communities to help eliminate stigma related to COVID. And then finally, working with faith leaders and Black and Asian minority ethnic communities to address the reluctance of some communities to receive the COVID vaccine. So the committee is asked to note the proposed strategic approach to ensuring that the council delivers against the adopted inclusion and diversity objectives. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dengi. Are there any speakers on this item? Speak now, for Councillor Henry.
I wanted to pick up with Dengi about that last point that she raised with the COVID vaccinations within the BAME community. How is that going? Because there's a bit of a mixed bag across the country, and we're seeing that that's actually quite a poor take-up within certain communities.
So what we've done is we've managed to get especially some of the Muslim community leaders vaccinated and used them to communicate that via their WhatsApp groups. We've also worked with one of the senior Muslim leaders, actually the representative, her name is Sidra, the representative of the Queen in Essex, and to create a video online piece around the vaccine and promoting that. And with the Asian community, we're starting to see traction, but we're still not attracting especially the Black African and Black Caribbean communities, despite speaking to the church leaders. So there is quite a bit of work to be done around the Black African and Black Caribbean communities, but we're seeing a breakthrough with the Asian communities in Basildon.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you, Dungay. I just have a quick point. I understand the transition of the role of the Inclusion and Diversity Manager, and I understand the concept behind it. But one of the things that I was thinking as I was reading the report was, when you kind of make inclusion and diversity integral to all council business, is there maybe a risk of it being overlooked or lost in the process? And how would do we have a process to ensure that that doesn't happen?
Right. First of all, we're making it everybody's personal responsibility to drive the agenda And one of the key things is making sure this is reported to the Governance and Assurance Board, because there's a monitoring process there, but also looking at how SLT, Senior Leadership Team, can own some of this and sponsor some of it. The other thing is with some of the strategies, as Grant has alluded to, these are going to be the key delivery platforms. So whilst there is a risk, we believe by making sure each of the various managers, the directors, SLT are owning the agenda, and there is a performance management board, which is the Governance and Assurance Board, that this will start to be mainstreamed as long as it's integral from the beginning. It's planted into all the various projects, all the policies, all the practices. And at the end of it, we are likely to see a huge change in terms of how other people own this. And one of the things that's really critical is, over the years, whilst there's been a lot of good work that's been going on, one of the challenges has been that there's been a lot of people leaning on the service, and it's a very small service. Actually, at the moment, there's 1 FTE. So there's a lot of dependency on the service, and therefore this way it will be the responsibility of each of those managers and each of the officers to actually take ownership and own the agenda. So it's the best way to mainstream and to ensure that the finite resources we have are actually helping to deliver the agenda.
Thank you, Denga. Councillor Yacoub, did you want to come back on that? No?
No, thank you.
Right, Councillor Schrader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ndungi, for your hard work and for your report. Funny enough, I'm not sure, is it the next item? I think it is the next item. We're going to be discussing Basel and side by side. I know you mentioned this continued.
Councillor Schrader, can we talk about Basildon side by side when it comes up?
Yeah, it's tangential to. Ndungi was talking about how we've sort of made this breakthrough with the Asian community, but that we still seem to be a similar breakthrough with the sort of the Black African community continues to be elusive. I know side by side is a relatively newer initiative. I wondered if there was any further opportunities there to maybe see if we could work with them to address that particular issue where a breakthrough is still unfortunately proving to be a little elusive.
Yes, just to answer that question, Basildon Side by Side has been extremely active in promoting take-up in vaccines. For those of you who've seen things like Facebook messages and quite out there in the social media, they are posting a lot of the conversations they're having around the vaccine, and also promoting and encouraging people to take up the vaccine. Speaking to some of the doctors, one of the things they're saying is when people talk to them from especially Black Caribbean, Black African communities, they're quite keen, and they'll say, yes, we'll turn up, but they're not turning up. So there is a little bit of work to be done. There's a range of different reasons why there is misinformation, first of all, but a range of different reasons why especially the Black African communities are not comfortable, or certainly some of them have indicated why. And these are the myths and misinformation we just need to support them in getting over. So quite a bit of work is happening with the doctors, and only recently I understand that Basildon's been pointed out as the one of the areas across Essex that has least take up, especially for those particular communities, Black, African and Black Caribbean. So they are doing a lot of work on it, and I think it's just about chipping away.
Thank you, Denga. Any other member wish to speak on this item? Okay, so the recommendation is that we note the report. Members, is this report noted? Thank you. We shall go on to the next item of business, which is Basildon Side by Side, and again, Denga is leading on that.
I do apologise, councillors, that you can't see me. I'm not very sure what's happened to my video. But I'll just talk about Basildon Side by Side very briefly. It started on the 5th of June. Most of you will know it was a response to the Black Lives Matters movement, but also to race hate incidents that were occurring across the borough. I've listed some of the achievements that Basildon Side by Side has been undertaking. So some of them include launching on the 25th of January this year, and they're planning a face-to-face, a formal main launch on the 9th of October this year. COVID, hopefully COVID will give way. Since the launch, they've also set an executive board and have now formally constituted as a community interest company to enable them to seek external funding. Some of the things they've done is just to enable them to deliver against the action plans. They have reviewed their previous list of 8 thematic groups, and this has led to the development of their first action plan as is set out in enclosure 1. And alongside that, I've also mentioned they have also developed a website. They're currently working with Essex Police to promote or encourage Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities to work for the police. They've done quite a lot in the census as well. And also, I mentioned earlier, run some online events to encourage the take-up of the COVID-19 vaccine. At the moment, some of their focus is about increasing the membership, really. That's what they aim to do. And the committee is just asked to note the progress that's been made to date by Basildon Side by Side.
Thank you. Councillor Cube, you have the floor, and then Councillor Schrader.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dungay. I think when I think about Basildon Side by Side, I go back to the initial conversation that we had, as Dungay mentioned, when we talked about with the BAME community about the incident, the racist incident that happened within the borough and the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think I have to be honest, I feel like it has been quite disappointing to see what it has evolved into. And for me, I feel like we were told very specifically by the community in that dialogue that we did not want, platitudes. We did not want something that was devoid of substance and something that wouldn't really affect real change. And I really feel, unfortunately, that is what Basildon Side by Side has become. And I think looking at some of the work, for example, one of the things on there was about identifying hate crime and helping people from the BAME community to identify hate crime. And I think that's great. But honestly, I feel like we're pretty much born with a diploma on that one. And when it comes to things like slotting BAME people into positions of cadets or school governors or police officers, I think that doesn't change structural and systemic racism and the barriers that they will face once they're in. And so I think the focus here is very outdated, I would say 3 or more decades ago. And I think that since then, the conversation has very much evolved. And I think that if you look at 2nd and 3rd generation of the BAME community, they are not appeased with being given a seat on the table. They want to decide what that table looks like. And they don't want to be given a chance to be accepted. As I heard one member of Side by Side say on the launch, they know what their worth is and they know how they contribute to society. And they don't call for people to be colorblind. They want to be seen. They want to be seen for all that they are, and they urge people to be color brave. And so to me, when I was reading this, the thought that crossed my mind was, this is a great blueprint on how to make it, how to get through a system that's essentially rigged against you. And for me, I was hoping that this would be a blueprint on how to shape it and how to transform that system that created the inequality in the first place. And just kind of sitting down, I thought of loads of ideas of things that we could do that would address that. And I think we need to have a chat about this, and we need to have a real discussion about, really honoring what we said to the community at that time, that this wasn't just going to be talking about it and, lip service. This was going to be real action. And I think that's what we need.
Can I respond to that point, please, Councillor? I completely agree with you, Councillor Yacoub. I am in the unfortunate position of not being able to shape or dictate the agenda because the community decided what they wanted to see. They worked with the police, decided what they wanted to do on hate crime. This is not my action plan, and I know we're there to support and guide. And obviously, I can relay back what you're saying. Perhaps there's room for the communities to come and listen to you, or you reach out to the Basildon side-by-side chair to see if some of what you're speaking about, which is about addressing the system and systemic racism, can be part of those plans. I wasn't in the position to shape that agenda, and I think it's about having a conversation with the people in that group at the moment, which we no longer are facilitating, for you to be able to just put forward exactly what your thinking is. So I do agree with you, Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you for that, Dangan. Councillor Yacoub, did you want to come back?
No, yeah, I just wanted to say I'm glad to hear that you're open to that, and I understand that you're not in a position to shape it. I completely see where you're coming from on that. But I think as a council, this is something that we did as a response to an incident that happened within the borough. And I think that there is a degree of accountability here for us. And so I think like you said, we need to have a conversation about how we direct this now and where we go from here. So, I mean, I'm open to everything that you just said.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you, Dangan. Councillor Schrader, did you still wish to speak?
Yeah, only to say that I think this is an ongoing conversation, and it has to be a two-way conversation between all parties concerned. Obviously, from my perspective, I attended the Basildon side-to-side launch event. I can't remember exactly who else was there, whether anyone else from the committee was there, but certainly the mayor was there and the leader of the council and the MPs and I want to say the chief constable. Yes, the chief constable was there. And so it was a very good launch event, I thought. But clearly there is always more that can be done. And I think that any feedback that goes back to side by side, as long as it's constructive feedback, would probably be very welcome. But I think that don't want to be entirely pessimistic. I thought that the launch event was good, and I think the work that that side by side have been doing has been valuable, and I think that the council should continue to work with side to side to develop their programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't at the launch, but I have heard an awful lot about the launch, and I'm kind of sad in a way because there's a lot of work has gone into it, and I'm sad in a way that it is or has been received in the way that it has. But I don't intend to sit as a middle-aged white man dictating or suggesting what should be the approach. So what I would ask would be, first of all, is it a wise move that the council doesn't have more of an input into it? And second of all, what would you change about it, Denge? What would be your start of your 10? What would be your quick wins? If we could do something differently, what would we do?
Thank you, Councillor Henry. In terms of what I would change, it's perhaps going back to the beginning, as Councillor Yacoub indicated, and looking at what actually came out of that and the intentions. So I do see exactly what Councillor Yacoub is talking about. So it is about where did we start? What were the conversations, and how are they playing out in the current action plan or activities planned by side? In terms of the council, did you ask what the council can do currently, Councillor Henry?
The question was something along the lines of: Is it the right move for the council to have no particular involvement in it?
All I can say about that is when we started out, one of the clear aims was to always enable Side by Side to take its own ownership of the initiative, and the council will only be an enabler. I know it did happen a lot quicker than anticipated, but at the moment, I think it's not within my gift to decide what we do in terms of the council doing anything further with Side by Side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dango. Did you want to come back, Councillor Henry?
No.
Right, so Councillor Golden, Councillor Morris, did you wish to say anything before I wrap up on this?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Morris.
No, only, Mr. Chairman, only to say I thought it was very insightful listening to Councillor Yaqub, and I really would imagine that the ongoing dialogue will happen to ensure that, you know, Side by Side is reflective of what we want to get out of it. We want it to be challenging. We want it to really address or to put forward suggestions to address some of the systemic issues that exist within our society. So yeah, I think it's been a really insightful debate, and you know, I wholeheartedly support Councillor Yaqub, her remarks, and the work going forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Golden. Right, I would just like to wrap up and thanks Councillor Dango for her hard work in the team. I know she lost one of her key workers recently. She's transferred to another full arm of local government, shall we say. Shamrika, she's done a fantastic job, and Dengo's holding the fort until we fill that vacancy. So I think on behalf of the committee, we'd like to thank Shamrika for the years of hard work she's given to the council, and naturally Dengo for all the work she's done on this project. It is greatly appreciated. So members, we are noting this report. Right, that looks fine. Now we go on to the work programme. Does anyone have anything to add to the work programme, or shall we wait till after these elections and then whoever's got their feet on this side of the table can work out what they want to put on the work programme? Councillor Henry.
Did you need to, we talked earlier on about Grant looking at the budget for BBW CVS and whether there was any stretch to that. Do we need to bring that back for discussion or list that somewhere?
Sarah, should that be on the work programme?
Yeah, that's not a problem. It wasn't formally agreed, but that's absolutely fine. Members are in agreement, so we can put that on the work programme so we don't miss it.
Thanks, Sarah.
That's fine. Okay, that's fantastic. I would like this added to the work programme, that Paula Mason and her team got a policy to support individuals going about their business after dusk. Obviously, when we meet again in the summer, it won't be a problem because the sun sets 9, 10 o'clock and so on. But again, we're going to face winter. We've had some horrible assaults in our local parks. We want to make sure ladies and vulnerable people are able to go about their business in as much safety as possible. Unfortunately, there are laws in this country that seem to favour the criminal over the law-abiding members of the public, and we as a council need to do whatever we can to make sure the law-abiding members of the public can go about their business. So if we can have that added onto the work programme as well. Any other items, members?
Yeah.
Councillor Golden, was there something you wanted?
Yeah, I just think it would be worth maybe putting on there that there's a report brought back to a committee on Side by Side going forward. I know, you know, that you know, we've got these very inconvenient things called elections coming up, but I think it would be really good to have just to set out our principle as and I'm sure this will be cross-party, that we want that back to have an update and to make sure, you know, that our views are reflected here. Also, I don't know whether we want to put it on here, but in terms of the antisocial behaviour working group, whether we just want to make sure that that's coming back at some point, or is just on the work programme to come back.
I've got that on the internal work programme. We won't, no, that won't be missed off. I'm just waiting, just an update on that. I'm just waiting for some nominations from a couple of the parties, and then officers will be going ahead with that. Lovely
stuff. My Vice Chairman, Councillor Golden, before we vote on this, there may be something you might want to announce to the committee so we can all thank you.
Chairman, with your
Hold
indulgence,
on, let me
I'm
wrap
happy
up
to
on the
do
work
that.
programme. I was just giving you the heads up. So that's the work programme dealt with. We've got our bits and pieces on. I should invite all members to unmute themselves and we'll vote on the work programme. So, Councillor Gordon, how will you be voting?
I vote in favour.
Councillor Henry?
In favour.
Councillor Morris?
I'll abstain, Chairman.
Councillor Schrader?
In favour.
Councillor Yacoub?
In favour.
And I should be voting in favour. Right, Andrew, is there something you wanted to tell the committee?
Yes, absolutely. It's not that exciting other than I won't be standing for re-election at the upcoming local elections. This will be my last ever Housing and Communities meeting in Basildon Borough Council after nearly 10 years of serving in various different forms on this committee. I have to say, I just want to put on record my thanks to all the officers who have been absolutely fantastic in providing support, answers to questions, dealing with all sorts of different bits and bobs. And also thanks to members who it's been absolutely brilliant to work with. Genuinely mean that. You know, Councillor Smith, we sit on completely opposite sides of the political spectrum. You're a massive Brexiteer. I'm a Remainer. Yet somehow, some I don't know how it's happened, but we've managed to work together without killing each other for the benefit of our local community. And I think what it highlights to me is it really means if you generally take time to listen to someone who you disagree with, you can actually get a good outcome for the people you represent. And I think that's, in my 10 years here in Basildon Borough Council, that's probably the lesson I'll learn. So yeah, thank you members and thank you officers for your support over the years.
Thank you ever so much for all your hard work, Councillor Golden. You're absolutely right at both sides of the Brexit debate, but that was probably a good thing with this committee. The winning side chairs it, and the unfortunate side, that's being polite, vice chairs it. So we've got that balance of fire and water. And to be fair, I think it was mainly under the sort of last years of Theresa May's premiership, when she was struggling about how to run a bath and the simple things a Prime Minister could do. She was that bad, she makes Boris look brilliant. That took some doing. And it was quite stressful in the community. Very, very stressful. If you was a Brexiteer and you saw someone who voted Remain and vice versa, it was daggers out, you know, full-blown rows. And it was so important, I think, having that split when we was going through that period. Now we don't talk about Brexit. It's this... It's almost got the words almost sounds like a breakfast cereal now.
Maybe we'll make an amendment to the work programme, Chairman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're tempting me with something there, Andrew, and I shan't. I'm going to be good. Very, very good. But no, you've been absolutely brilliant, Andrew, and I think it's good to have that balance on a committee, particularly housing communities, where we can get the business done. And it wasn't personal, was never nasty, and no, thank you. So, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank Councillor Golden. If members would like to say something, here is your chance. Speak now, or forever hold your whatchamacallit.
Thank you for your service, Andrew.
I think I will miss. I will
Speech in between now and May.
Lovely stuff. You're not going to drop off of one of your posters, Jeff, out to Andrews?
What? No. He's no longer prohibited from dropping off them for me. Other than, you know, that he'd kill himself sooner than do that. That's a terrible, terrible thing to suggest anyone to, now that we can all go out of the house again.
Well, I think they call it good old-fashioned capitalism.
Here's the biggest thing tonight. Are we actually going to let Sarah get to bed or get offline before 9 o'clock?
We are. There's a certain member.
I don't think that woman's seen her family before 11 p.m. most nights this year.
Yeah. Well, when you have your group meetings, if you were to get the council, please don't put Councillor Rim as chairman of this committee. We'll be having 3 o'clock. We'll have to have the guillotine put on this committee.
Let him know how much you've missed him.
That committee will change.
We'll give him your love.
I just wanted to say that I'm going to miss Councillor Gordon, and it's been amazing working in housing and communities with him. So
here. Right, on that happy bombshell, and it's very, and just to wrap up to say, this is the one weeks away from election day, and we've all been rather nice and civilised. I thank you, members, for that. It's been really good tonight. Officers, thank you for your time and assistance, and I shall see you all, guns drawn at dawn at full council on Thursday night.
Oh my God. Right. Good night, all. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Cheers. Oh, I can press leave. Lovely.